we are thankful to be here. We're thankful for a church that just pours love into us and gives us every opportunity that we want to do whatever we want in the gym and move down here and invade the sanctuary for an hour and just be able to plug into all the things that you have for us. Without this opportunity, a lot of us would be missing those kind of moments with you that are milestone moments in our journey with you. When we take another step closer, when we identify something in our life we need to get rid of, or when we identify in our life something that we need to jump into just all the way and completely devote ourselves to it. It's times like this that those things get clarity. And so I just pray that for all of us in here, we would lean in, listen for your voice. As we open your word, I pray that you would apply it to our minds, that we wouldn't grow shallow, apply it to our hearts, that we wouldn't grow cold, and apply it to our feet so that we're not just hearers of your word, but doers also. These things we pray in your awesome name. Amen. All right, so last night, this is the last night of Frontier. I've loved this because it's kind of given me some perspective about myself, because when I remember being your age and it being like wide open, like who knows what God has for me in the future, there was so much anticipation. Now, it's still like that. Because I never know what God's going to call me into. God didn't just call me into a particular direction and then go, okay, I'm done with you now. Just go do whatever you want. Like, his relationship with me is active and evolving and changing, and he's constantly pushing me to do things that stretch me and help grow me into the man that he needs me to be. The same thing that he's going to be doing for you, to help stretch you and to be the men and the women that he's created you to be. It's a daily journey. It can't be something that you just commit to at one day in your life and then just kind of put it on the back burner for many years and then go, oh yeah, I remember God wanted me to do that one time. It's a thing where your relationship with your spouse wouldn't be that way. You would grow every day closer and closer to your spouse. So it's the same thing when you think about how am I going to grow closer to God? It's a daily thing where even the small things matter. Even the things that you think are insignificant, you go, these are moments that I grew closer because I was trusting God in the middle of that season. And so what we're going to be talking about is an interesting story. But like I've said before, whenever we walk into this, you have to put yourself into this person's shoes. You have to think about it in terms of, what would I do in this situation? How does this relate to my life now? It's not just good enough that we read the Bible and know what it says. We have to figure out how do we apply it when we leave here. That's why I pray that we're not just people who hear the word and don't do anything about it, but we put it to action with our feet. We go take it into the world and we apply it. So this is going to be one of those unique stories. So we're talking about Elijah, who's a prophet. When I told you last time, we talk about prophets, really their only job is to take what God has given them, the word, that he said, this is what I want you to tell the people, to take that word and to go in and just give it to the people, okay? I told you what to say, so you receive it, now you go take it to the people. Now, Elijah is a powerful prophet, and you'll see this in 1 Kings chapter 18. We're not going to be in 1 Kings 18, so I have to give you just like the setup for where we're going to be. This is what he does, okay? He challenges the king and 450 other prophets. Elijah is a prophet of God. There's 450 other prophets or prophets of a fake God. A God that they worshiped, idols. And so it's just one guy up against 450 of these guys. And this is what Elijah says. He goes, okay, you want to test this out? We'll have a showdown on the mountain. Okay? You bring all your prophets that you have and you call on your God to show up. Now, this is what I'm going to do. I'll let you go first. And then after you're done calling on your gods to show up, I'm going to call on my God to show up. And what we talked about last week, I said that you pray. When Jabez said, bless me indeed, he was praying that, God, you would show up in my life in such a way that proves that you're real and that you're alive and you're working through me. Show up in that. Remember that when we talked about that? Like, show up in a way that just proves you're real. Elijah does this. 1 Kings chapter 18. You show up. You guys go first. I'll wait. So he watches, and they call on their gods, and they're cutting themselves, to do all these things, to sacrifice, to hopefully show up, And so they're bleeding all over the place, and all these guys are just trying to get their fake God to show up. And then Elijah goes, okay, you guys done yet? My turn. And I love that part. He doesn't say my turn, but in effect, it's kind of like, okay, are you guys done wasting my time? Let me show you what happens. He calls down God, and God just comes down with fire and burns up all their idols. And so when Elijah does this, you think, man, this guy's got guts. This guy stood against 450 other people and a king and Jezebel, these people that worship these false idols, and he just said, oh, hey, it's me and you, okay? I know who's on my side, and so he shows up in a powerful way, right? He goes, I'm going to call upon my God to show up, and he does. And so after this happens, Elijah goes, all right, capture all those prophets and have them killed. And so, boom, chapter 18's done. And you think to yourself, wow, this guy's got some, like, he was what I would consider like a guy that's like full of diesel. Like, he's intimidating. Everybody around him knows he's the boss. Like, I'm Elijah. I just called upon my God to burn up all your idols. Okay, now we get into chapter 19, and we get into the stuff that's a little bit more personal. Are you ready? Okay, so I wish I could have had those kind of moments where I would have said, man, when I showed up, when God asked me to speak to that group of people, when God called me to Georgia to be a youth pastor at this church, and I got up to speak, I let God speak through me. I let you speak through me so much that it just changed people's lives. But it wasn't because of me, it was because you were doing it through me. And people, man, everybody, God showed up in a way that was so clear. But here's the reality. Is that over time, you will grow closer to God. I won't be aware of it, but you'll be aware of it. You'll go, man, over time, me being a part of youth group, me being a part of the mission trips and the camps and the retreats, those things brought me closer to God, closer than I ever could have gotten by myself. Because we live in a world right now where people are just staying home from church, right? Just like, you know what, I could just watch it. I could watch it on TV. Easy. But they're missing a huge element, which is you guys getting together and saying, man, I'm going to go through this with people I know. We're going to do life together. Now, Elijah's somebody who I think, man, if I was that powerful, I probably wouldn't need a whole lot of people around me. And that's what gets him in trouble. 1 Kings chapter 19, I'll put it behind me. This is Jezebel, who's a friend of the king. And she's mad. She hears what happened in 18, chapter 18. She hears what just happened. Elijah showed up and called God's fire down upon the fake idols, and she's mad. If I were her, I probably wouldn't react the same way. I'd probably be like, okay, it's clear, our gods are fake, yours is the real one, right? I mean, that's the way I would feel. But she's just really, really mad. And you can see it right here. May the gods strike me and even kill me if by this time tomorrow I have not hunted you down and killed you myself. Like give me 24 hours. I will do everything in my power to hunt you down and kill you. Now you got to put yourself back in Elijah's shoes. He's already done these amazing things. He's already let God use him in a powerful way. And now I put myself in where you guys are. You guys might have grown up in the church or might have people that have really poured Jesus into your life. And you're like, man, I'm good. But then all of a sudden, a storm comes in your life and you realize that your faith might not be as strong as you thought it was. That's okay. We just need to identify it right now. We need to figure out where are the cracks in us, where if somebody puts a little pressure on it, we start to crack even more and we might run. Tell me, does this sound weird when you get into this? This is the threat that Jezebel, her response is, I'm going to come after you and I'm going to kill you. Write this down. Threats from our spiritual enemy, I love this word, they're hollow. Threats from our spiritual enemy are hollow, meaning that there's not anything behind them. They can't actually do something to you, because Elijah, if he's following what God's called him to do you think God's going to let our spiritual enemy keep you from doing what he's called you to do? There's nothing. Let this sink in. If this is the only thing you ever hear from me, there is nothing. If you say, God, take me, use me, call me to go wherever you call me to go, I'll follow you. Once you do that, you are unstoppable. Use me. I know I have some kind of skill somewhere in here. I don't know where it is. I feel like I'm horrible at everything. But God, if you choose to use me, I'll go. I remember when I was a youth pastor, the first place I ever went. Okay? And can I be super vulnerable with you? Because I love you guys. And this is one of those moments where I feel like I can talk to you just straight from my heart. Okay? I was in college. I was getting close to the end of my time, and I was getting ready to graduate. And what I would be doing is going off and becoming a full-time youth pastor somewhere in the world. I didn't know where. Okay? But I took a job, an internship, just for the summer. I moved away from home for the first time. That was scary enough. And I was 22 years old. And it's terrifying to move out of the house when you got nothing. Like, I didn't have any support system. I didn't know anybody. So I arrived at this church, and I remember sitting there in my office on like the first day of my work day. It's like Monday morning. And I'm sitting there in my office, and I was so close to just falling apart. Emotionally. It was just me and the pastor. We were the only two people in the office. But this is my first time being away from my support system, my home. I would regularly get up from my desk, go into the bathroom to cry. Because I just felt like I was all by myself, and I had no idea if I was going to be good at this career or not. I thought, you know what? If I'm bad at this, I might not have any idea what to do with my life on the other side of it. But I said, every day I went in there until eventually, after about 2 weeks, I started to go, you know what? If I'm going to be successful at this, I've got to push through all these fake things I'm believing, these lies I'm believing about myself. They're hollow. That you're horrible at what you do. You're awful as a human being. You'll never live up to what God's calling you to do. All of those phrases that race through your mind over and over again, they're hollow. They have no depth to it. That when you push back against it and you go, I will fight this, you'll realize that it's a very short tunnel and there's light right there on the other side of it. And you go, I cannot believe I could have gone home. The second or third day I went into the bathroom to cry. How embarrassing is it that I'm sharing this story with you? I've never told anybody. Have I told you this story? I've told my wife. Okay, so have I told you this story?
Never told us.
Okay. For me, it was about that moment that I went, I don't know if I'll ever be able to do what you've called me to do. I knew that this is what God wanted me to do. I just didn't know if I'd be good at it. And if I wasn't good at it, then that is the mark of the worst failure ever. I know what God wants me to do and I can't do it. These threats are hollow. Now listen to this. Listen to what his response is. What would you predict, before you read what's on the screen, what would you predict Elijah, after doing everything that he did in chapter 18, what would you predict his reaction would be if somebody said, I'm going to kill you? I would, initially, while I'm reading through it, I'm going, oh, well, that's clearly hollow, and Elijah will be like, you want to fight? Why? Why would I be threatened by you? I already stood in front of 450 people, and I called down fire from heaven, and I watched it happen with my own eyes. I watched God show up. What do you think his reaction is? This is what he did. He went alone into the wilderness, traveling all day. He sat down under a solitary broom tree. I don't know what a broom tree looks like, but he just sits down and he prays. He prays that he might die. Now, do you feel a little bit the weight of the emotions that he's dealing with right now? Like, he knows that God's real because he's praying. But talk about a prayer that he's glad God didn't answer. He says, I pray, I've had enough. Take my life. I'm no better than my ancestors. The people who've already died before me, I'm no better than them. I just want to give up. You will get to this moment several times in your life. Many times. If you are following what God's called you to do, because you will always have opposition from your spiritual enemy. If you're following what God's called you to do. If you're wasting away your life doing something else, don't expect that Satan will care about your life. Okay? He's just like, as long as you're doing what God's called you to do, I'm good. Waste it away sitting on the couch. I don't care. And you probably won't have much temptation at all. But if you're following what God's called you to do, if people are pushing up against you and you feel like your faith is cracking, just like it was in that game when it seemed like a little bit of pressure on those PVC pipes. If you guys are here. Okay, it was like, there's a little bit of pressure in there. Bah! And I was like, oh man, this isn't working. Just a little bit of pressure sometimes and we can crack. He's cracking. And I relate so much to this prayer. There are so many times that I didn't pray that I might die, because I read that verse over and over again, right there. Like that, I haven't got to the point where I pray that I might die, but you know what my prayers have been like? I'll admit this to you. I have prayed that God would take the call to ministry off of my life. Because sometimes it's such a heavy burden to carry. Because it's not just me. Everything that you guys go through, I carry with me. And sometimes it's so heavy. And now think about it. We don't have a whole lot of people here tonight, but it doesn't change the fact that every empty seat that normally people would be sitting in, I worry about where they are right now too. So I carry that. And I go home and Abby feels the weight of all of that. Because once I leave, then I start asking her the same questions that come up every time. The question is, did anybody get anything out of this tonight? Was I a complete mess? Was it awful? Was every word out of place? Did anybody hear me? Those are the questions I ask. And if youth pastors would watch this, they would say, Jeremy, you're being way too vulnerable in front of your youth group. I've had youth pastors come up and tell me that. You're too vulnerable in front of your youth group. You'll always see me as clear, transparent. I'll be always open with you guys. Sometimes the hardest thing you could do is follow what God's called you to do. Because that'll be when you get the most pushback. You know, feel like your faith is cracking. Like you're trying to walk across an ice pond, and with every step you take, you get farther and farther out there, and you feel the ice below you cracking beneath your feet, and you think, I just don't know how much longer I got. If I were talking to him right now, somebody who was a hero of the faith, Elijah, I mean, really, if I got a chance to sit down and have dinner with Elijah, I'd be like, man, bro, how could you doubt? You just watched him do all those amazing things. Well, here's for all of us to understand. You guys are here right now. Do you guys realize that it's a miracle you guys are here right now? You guys said, I want to grow closer to God. I don't want to watch the football game. I don't want to do this, do that. Like, my priority is, I want to be here. That alone is awesome. Now, does that mean that other people are failing because they're not here? No. But I mean, it is a miracle when you guys prioritize God above everything else. That is always a spiritual miracle. That is what Jesus did when he healed people. He healed them physically, but that wasn't really the miracle. The miracle is when they said, I want to believe in you. Then Jesus went, that's it. That's the miracle. Like, sure, I gave you a few more years. I healed your eyes, your ears. That's great. But the real miracle is that you want to follow me. That changes everything. Now, what's going to happen? What do you think is going to happen? You guys read 1 Kings 19? You guys know what the other side of this looks like? Can you predict, after a prayer like this, how he's going to respond? No, better yet, can you predict how God's going to respond to a prayer like this? Asking God to take my life that he might die. What do you think God's response would be to that kind of request? We obviously know that God didn't take his life right then.
Why?
What? I mean, why?
That would be God's response. Like, why would you want to die?
Okay.
I think you just feel like, like there's too much. You can't, don't be selfish enough to end it,
Yeah. Yeah, because he's going to get, Bailey, you're right there. Because the mentality is, it's not about you. Okay? All of our lives are like a vapor. They're gone. They're in, they're out. You're like, all of a sudden, like you have an unlimited number of years and days. And what I said at the beginning of this frontier that we're all embarking upon is that you can't just look at your slice of history. Elijah wanted to die, but God said, I got plans. So this is how I'm going to unpack those plans. You ready? This is important. Number 2, our evaluation of our lives is different. It differs from God's evaluation of our lives. Does that make sense? The way you evaluate how successful you are, the way you evaluate your importance or your value is different than the way God evaluates it. Isn't it? If you can let that sink in for just a moment, that however it is that you look at your life and go, this is how important I am, just know that God is looking at your life differently. He is saying, you have no idea the impact that you'll make if you follow me. Because I'm not looking to just change your life. This is God talking to you. I'm not looking to just change your life. I'm looking to change your life and then use you to change the world. And I know, as soon as you say the phrase change the world, you guys kind of like glaze over because you guys are going, are you serious? Like, this isn't a motivational talk, I promise, okay? It's not about just going, hey, you do this, the world will be a different place. You have a world that you live in. Now, think about that world. Who are the people that live in proximity to you that you see on a regular basis? Is it a coincidence that it changes every year? You still have the same people at home, but it changes every year that you're in school. It changes every year that you go from middle school to high school, and then you go from high school to whether it's the military or full-time work or full-time education. All of a sudden, your world changes again, does it not? I mean, if I'm lying, just yell at me. I'm fine with that. But your world changes on purpose. There's a reason that we don't just stay in this small little area. Jesus never moved farther than about 30 miles from his hometown. But he ran into a lot of different people. Traveling, bumping into people. Your evaluation of what you're going to do with your life, it differs from God's because you can't see all the impact that you'll make. But God sees it. But you won't know how many people you've made an impact in. You'll never know. You'll never know on this side of heaven. But does that mean that you value your life and say, man, I bet, let me be honest. I bet all those teenagers from Arkansas, my first job back in 2005, I bet none of them remember me. You know how long I thought that? For a long, I mean, even recently, I was like, man, those kids don't remember me. 2005? That was, 16 years ago. If they were a teenager, they would be like 30 now, okay? Like teenagers in my youth group will be 30 years old now. Isn't that what?
Oh, no.
You working the math in your head? You're like, they were like 40. Yeah, they were. They would have been. And you know what? I have those students who are married and have children now and have reached out to me and remembered that summer that I spent with them. You'll doubt the impact that you're making, but God sees all of what you're investing into the world. Now, let's figure out. This is the burning question, right? The burning question is, how does he move out of this, I'm praying that I'll die? Because in my opinion, people are out to kill me, I'm useless, maybe I should just die. Well, here we go. This is what God sends angels to be by his side, and I think this is very practical. You ready? He encourages him to eat some food. The angel is have some food. Now, not only that, verse 7, get up and eat some more. The journey that you have set out before you will be too much for you to handle if you're hungry. Okay? So, I know this seems practical, probably hard to apply to your life right now, but in this moment, God wasn't looking to just go, I'll pick you up and I'll put you in an awesome space and now you're king over all these people. He pulled them out gently. God understood exactly the pain that was going on inside of his chest. Don't ever think that the pain that you go through, that God is indifferent to it. Does that make sense? That God's kind of like, get over it. So what? So you're having a relationship problem. I got kids in Africa that don't have food. Don't think that. Don't think that your problems are minimal because somebody else in the world has a greater problem. If the problem means the world to you, it means the world to God. And he will help walk you out of it. That's how much he cares about you. Would you not care for your own children? For your own friends? For the people that were going through something? You would say, I'll be there for you. If you'll be there for them, how much more will God be there for them? How much more will God be there for you? He picks them up slowly. Get some food. This is going to be a long journey. You are going to get worn out, but I need to refuel you. So write this down. Sometimes the most spiritual thing that you can do in your life is to rest and be quiet. That question has come up a lot recently. Is it okay for me to take time away from all the chaos? Absolutely. Sometimes the most spiritual thing that you can do is take a step away from everything that's going on around you and say, I need time in the wilderness with God. That wilderness comes up a lot. Jesus would slip away before his disciples even woke up and go, I just need time with my Father. I don't need these 12 guys like tapping me on the shoulder and asking me questions. Like, I need time on my own. Sometimes you need that time. And for Elijah, the question that Bailey put out there too was that what is the answer to this prayer? Well, the answer to the prayer is first, I'm going to recharge you. And then I'm going to show up in a way that is undeniably me. But first, we have to key in on what God is speaking to us. If we're caught up in our own worries and our anxieties, and I'm the worst at it, I can get up with all my anxiety, I can miss God's voice because I'm listening to all of my negativity in my head. Man, this is my worst enemy. In my head, I could let all of those hollow threats make decisions for me. And this is the most important thing. And this is one of my favorite passages that I think is so clearly me. Maybe you won't relate to it as clear as I do, but I put it at the bottom of your paper because I want you to read it at some point during this week, and I'll put it behind me too, is this. This is what God tells Elijah to do. Go out and stand before me on the mountain, the Lord told him. And as Elijah stood there, listen to this. The Lord passed by, and a mighty windstorm hit the mountain. It was such a terrible blast that the rocks were torn loose. But, hear this, the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake. But the Lord wasn't in the earthquake. After the earthquake, there was a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, there was a gentle whisper. That was when the Lord passed by. That was the presence that he was waiting for. Sometimes we look, and I would be expecting Elijah to wait for the fire. You know, he just saw God come down in fire. So it seems like we would just be looking for God to do something that just wrecks everything and then puts us back together real quick. Boom! Like, God, fix everything in my life right now. But God said, you just need to be quiet. Because you're waiting for this big thing to happen or this big thing to happen. But here's the thought that changes everything. Write this down. The quiet whisper, that's what changes people's hearts. When you think about the moment that you heard God speaking to you, maybe it wasn't at camp when the music was super loud and the lights were going crazy and everybody was worshiping around you. Maybe it was. But when it was that moment where you were going to let God, you would hear God's voice, I'm betting that it was one of those moments that you got alone with God and you listened for him to speak. That it's in that gentle whisper, that quiet moment when God's going to move into your chaos and say, I still got you in my hands. You trust me, right? I know you're waiting for all the things and all the problems in your life to just fix themselves. But why don't you do this? Why don't you trust me with it? Lean in and listen for my voice. So often, whenever I pray, I just fill that time with words. You know, like you just listen to me pray into this microphone. And sometimes there's moments that you need to just be like, Jeremy, just stop talking for a moment. I need to listen. So what we are going to do is we're going to have the worship team come up. I'm going to turn the lights off, and we're just going to be quiet for like 30 seconds. I just want it to be a moment where you're thinking in your mind, without all the things that go on around us, that this is a moment that I'm giving to you, God. Show up, speak to me. Now, maybe God won't talk to you in a clear way in this 30 seconds, but maybe when you carve out that 30 seconds or a minute or 3 minutes or 5 minutes when you're home on your own by yourself, God will speak to you in a way that is undeniably him. That you go, I know what you're trying to tell me now. Maybe God is just trying to tell you, it's going to be okay. I'm with you every step of the way. I haven't gotten farther than one step from you. I've been within arm's reach your entire life, and I'm not going to let go now. So let's pray, and let's just wait for that gentle whisper. I'm going to turn the lights out, and then we'll sing this last song.
Sing a new song to him who sits
team. Give it up for Bailey, Jake, and Abby. Man, you guys rock it every week. And you put time and effort and just practicing through these things and picking out the songs. It just always fall into place exactly the way God wants them to. And so I am incredibly grateful because, man, I love our Sunday nights together. You guys have an awesome week. You guys know that Abby and I are always here for you, just like I say every week. But I feel like if I don't say it, then you don't believe it. So I'll say it every week. I love you guys so much. We love you so much. So have an awesome night, and we'll see you back here next Sunday on Valentine's Day.